Some promises are meant to be kept forever. Others are meant to be broken at exactly the right moment. This is a story about two childhood friends who learned the difference between the two, and how that knowledge changed everything. If this story touches your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales that remind us what truly matters in life. Maya and Ethan grew up on the same street in a small coastal town where everyone knew everyone's name. They were inseparable from the age of 6 when Ethan's family moved into the house next door. Maya was the dreamer, always carrying a worn notebook where she'd sketch impossible castles and distant galaxies. Ethan was the realist, the one who built tree houses with precise measurements and kept a calendar of every important date. They were opposites in every way, but that's exactly why they fit together like two pieces of a puzzle. On the summer evening of their 12th birthday, which they happened to share, they sat on the dock behind Maya's house watching the sun melt into the ocean. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, and the water reflected it all back like a mirror. Maya dangled her feet over the edge, kicking at the water below. Ethan sat cross-legged beside her, throwing pebbles into the waves. That's when they made their first promise. Maya turned to Ethan with that serious look she got when something truly mattered to her. "Promise me something," she said. "Promise me that no matter what happens, no matter where life takes us, we'll always be honest with each other. No secrets, no lies, just truth." Ethan didn't hesitate. He held out his pinky finger, and Maya locked hers with his. "I promise," he said. "Always honest. Always." They had no idea how much that promise would be tested in the years to come. High school arrived like a storm neither of them was prepared for. Maya blossomed into someone confident and magnetic, joining the drama club and filling notebooks with poetry instead of drawings. Ethan retreated into himself, finding solace in books in the quiet corners of the library. They still spent time together, but something had shifted. The easy comfort of childhood had been replaced by an awkward awareness that they were growing into different people. It was during their junior year that Maya fell in love with Daniel, a senior with an easy smile and dreams of becoming a musician. Ethan watched from the sidelines as Maya glowed in a way he'd never seen before. She'd talk about Daniel for hours, and Ethan would listen, nodding in all the right places, offering advice when she asked for it. But inside, something was breaking, because Ethan had his own secret, one that violated the promise they'd made on that dock 5 years ago. He was in love with Maya. Had been for years, probably since that first day she'd defended him from bullies in elementary school. But he'd kept it hidden, buried it so deep that sometimes he could almost pretend it wasn't there. Then came the night that changed everything. It was the week before prom, and Maya showed up at Ethan's door at 11 p.m. with tears streaming down her face. Daniel had broken up with her, told her he was moving to Nashville right after graduation, and didn't want to be tied down. Ethan let her in, made her tea, and listened as she poured out her heartbreak. "I thought he was the one," Maya sobbed. "I thought we had something real." Ethan held her hand across the kitchen table. "You deserve someone who sees how incredible you are," he said quietly. "Someone who would never leave you behind." Maya looked up at him, her eyes red and swollen. "Like you?" The question hung in the air between them. This was the moment Ethan could tell her the truth, could honor the promise they'd made. But as he looked at her broken expression, he made a choice. He made a second promise, this one to himself. He would never tell her. He would never risk their friendship or add to her pain by burdening her with feelings she didn't share. "Like a best friend," he said instead, forcing a smile. "Always." Maya leaned her head on his shoulder, and Ethan felt the weight of his broken promise settle into his bones. They graduated that spring. Maya decided to stay local and attend the community college, studying creative writing. Ethan earned a scholarship to a university 3 hours away. The night before he left, they sat on that same dock where they'd made their first promise. The water was calm, reflecting the stars above. "I'm going to miss you," Maya said softly. "Promise me we'll stay close. Promise me distance won't change us." "I promise," Ethan said, and he meant it. For the first year, they kept that promise. Weekly phone calls, monthly visits, constant text messages. But slowly, inevitably, life began to pull them in different directions. Ethan immersed himself in his engineering program, making new friends and discovering who he was outside of his small town. Maya threw herself into her writing, working at a local bookstore and slowly healing from her heartbreak. By their senior year of college, the calls had become monthly, then sporadic. The visits stopped altogether. They still texted occasionally, but the conversations were surface level, lacking the depth they once had. Neither of them acknowledged what was happening. It was easier to let the distance grow than to confront what they were losing. Then came the call that brought everything back into focus. It was a Tuesday evening when Ethan's phone rang. He saw Maya's name and felt a flutter of guilt. It had been 3 months since they'd last spoken. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Ethan?" Maya's voice was small, frightened. "I need you." 20 minutes later, Ethan was in his car, driving through the night toward home. Maya's mother had collapsed. A stroke, the doctor said. She was stable, but the prognosis was uncertain. Maya was at the hospital, alone, and she'd called Ethan because he was the only person she wanted there. Ethan arrived at dawn and found Maya in the waiting room, curled up in a plastic chair. When she saw him, she broke down. He held her like he had that night after her breakup, and it felt like no time had passed at all. Over the next 2 weeks, Ethan stayed. He deferred his final exams, told his professors it was a family emergency. Because that's what Maya was, family. He brought Maya meals she barely touched, sat with her during the long hospital vigils, and held her hand when the doctors delivered updates. Her mother slowly improved, and one evening as they sat in the hospital cafeteria, Maya looked at Ethan with exhausted gratitude. "Why did you come?" she asked. "Why did you drop everything for me?" Ethan looked down at his cold coffee. This was it again, another moment where the truth balanced on the edge of his tongue. "Because that's what friends do," he said. But Maya shook her head. "No, Ethan, tell me the truth. Remember our promise? Always honest." Something in her eyes told him she already knew. Maybe she'd always known. Ethan took a deep breath and finally, after 8 years, he broke his second promise, the one he'd made to himself. "Because I love you," he said quietly. "I've loved you since we were kids. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to lose you, and I thought keeping it secret was protecting our friendship. But maybe I was just protecting myself." Maya's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "You idiot," she whispered. "You beautiful, stupid idiot." She reached across the table and took both his hands. "I've been waiting for you to say that for 3 years, since the day you left for college, and I realized I couldn't imagine my life without you. I thought if you felt the same way, you would have said something. So I tried to move on, tried to convince myself we were just friends." Ethan felt like the world had tilted on its axis. 3 years? 3 years of me being too scared to tell you. 3 years of us both keeping secrets because we thought we were protecting each other. Maya laughed through her tears. "We're really bad at the honesty thing, aren't we?" They sat there in that fluorescent-lit cafeteria, holding hands across a plastic table, and laughed until they cried. All those years of silence, of swallowed words and hidden feelings, suddenly seemed absurd. Maya's mother recovered slowly but surely. 6 months later, she was back home, attending physical therapy and regaining her strength. Ethan finished his degree remotely and moved back to their hometown. He and Maya didn't rush into anything. They took it slow, relearning each other as adults, as potential partners instead of just friends. 2 years after that hospital cafeteria confession, Ethan and Maya stood on the same dock where they'd made their first promise. The sun was setting, painting the sky in those familiar shades of orange and pink. Ethan got down on one knee, and Maya cried happy tears as he asked her to marry him. "I have a new promise to make," Ethan said, slipping the ring onto her finger. "I promise to always tell you the truth, even when it's scary, especially when it's scary." Maya pulled him to his feet and kissed him, and I promise to do the same. No more secrets, just us, being honest about everything. They got married the following summer in a small ceremony by the ocean. At the reception, Ethan stood to give a speech. He looked at Maya, radiant in her simple white dress, and then at all the people who'd gathered to celebrate them. "Everyone talks about keeping promises," he began, "and promises are important. Maya and I made a promise when we were 12 to always be honest with each other. We kept that promise most of the time, but I also made a second promise, one I kept for 8 years. I promised myself I'd never tell Maya I loved her because I was afraid of losing her friendship." He paused, finding Maya's eyes across the room. "That was the promise I needed to break. Because sometimes the scariest thing we can do is tell the truth. Sometimes we break our own promises to ourselves because we're afraid. But I learned that protecting someone from the truth isn't the same as protecting them. Real love, real friendship, it requires honesty even when honesty is terrifying." Maya stood and walked to him, taking his hand. "We both learned that lesson," she added. "We spent years dancing around the truth because we thought we were protecting each other, but we were really just protecting ourselves from the possibility of getting hurt, and in doing that we hurt each other in a different way." She turned to face their guests. "So here's what we want to leave you with. Keep your promises. Be honest with the people you love, but also know that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is break a promise you made to yourself out of fear. Sometimes the promise to stay silent is the one that needs to be broken." The guests erupted in applause. Maya and Ethan shared a kiss as the sun set behind them, casting long shadows across the water. They'd spent so many evenings on that dock, making promises and breaking them, learning what it meant to truly know another person. Years later, when people asked them how they made their marriage work, they always gave the same answer. They kept the promise that mattered, the one about honesty, and they forgave themselves for breaking the promise that didn't, the one about staying silent. Because in the end, the most important promise isn't about what we'll never say. It's about having the courage to say what needs to be said, even when our voices shake, even when we're terrified of the answer. That's the promise that changes everything. That's the promise worth keeping. If this story reminded you of the power of honesty and courage in relationships, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Share this with someone who needs to hear that. Sometimes breaking a promise to yourself is the bravest thing you can do. Thank you for listening, and remember that the truth, no matter how scary, is always worth telling.